Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
It is a cold, dreary, wet night between cities, where we find ourselves on the big blue couch once again. And we are happy that you have chosen to join us, and hopefully it is not gray and rainy where you are at while you are listening to this.
Or hopefully, if it is, you're sunny on the inside.
Yeah, or maybe this is your thing. Maybe this is like, and I love a good, cold, rainy, wet night. That's my jam. If that's your case, then awesome. Hey, then props to you. This night is yours. But for us, man, whew.
Yeah, and we dedicate this show to you.
Yeah. And you know who you are.
Oh, yeah.
I'll single you out by name. Gareth. I don't know.
It's a good name. It's a good name for a rain lover.
Yeah. I just really want us to have a listener named Gareth now.
You think there are going to be eventually there'll be a bunch of Gareths in the United States, right? I mean, that's...
No, yeah.
Or has that already happened?
Maybe that's already happened. I
feel like that's still a mostly British thing. But now that they're more British Gareths becoming famous for this and that, that I think we usually catch up with stuff like that.
Yeah, Gareth will come around.
We'll see.
So welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
Yeah, and welcome. This is, of course, the podcast where two guys sit around talking about movies. It's never been done.
Nope.
In fact, we're shocked. We were shocked to realize that it had never been done. But being the brave humans that we are, we knew
trendsetters.
Yeah, and we knew that this was a mantle that not only did we that we should pick up, that we knew we needed to.
Somebody has to.
Somebody had to. We did not ask for we did not ask to be heroes. We had heroism thrust upon us.
And we're just doing the best we can, folks.
That's right. How was your week, Ryan?
It was awesome. I don't know if you're listening to our podcast in order. I don't know if you remember that I was lamenting that I wasn't going to be able to... Normally, the week after Halloween, I watch the Godfather movies. That's my Godfather week. I'm very much a creature of habit. And, I mean, I can mix it up, but mostly left to my own devices, this is what I do. And it keeps me from having to look at the giant wall of movies and make decisions every day, which is you waste your whole life just staring in indecision. So I have routines that I sort of follow. Anyway, I was thinking, I had a busy week last week, so I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to, or I'll put it in, I'll watch 20 minutes of it, and that'll be that. But I watched them all, every single one of them. I watched the entire special features on the Restoration Blu-ray box set. I watched Apocalypse Now. I watched The Conversation. I watched Raging Bull.
Wow.
I watched Ishtar. Plus I watched the commentary or at least the first half of the commentary for Apocalypse Now. Basically, I haven't slept really much at all. I read the entire internet last week, so if you have any questions about that.
That's good. You reached the end of the internet.
Yeah.
That's good.
They keep making new stuff.
Well, yeah, sure, and they update it stuff, but you've read it. Yeah, you had it all.
Yeah, I had time to do it, so I did it. So, those are great movies. So at least I have, I don't know, if I'm sitting around here, I have great movies. I don't just, no offense, if this is your routine, I don't want to rip on it. Mine's pretty pathetic when you think about it. But, I don't just take whatever Netflix says I should watch next. I mean, I try and think these through, and I try and watch stuff that's, really good. And Ishtar found its way in there. Ishtar's pretty bad. It has the reputation as being a total disaster, which it isn't.
No.
It's almost worse.
I think you could point to Ishtar as being, the movie that made people. To me, that was the first time I ever heard people talk about successful movies in terms of their box office. And box office versus budget.
Mm-hmm.
That was frankly, that was the first time I think I ever remember anybody ever talking about, oh, this movie has this crazy huge budget.
Yeah.
Oh, the budget. Oh, and then and it's been plagued. I didn't remember before that hearing about behind the scenes stuff about movies.
Right. I mean, unless you were subscribing to Variety or whatever in 1984, why would you know?
Yeah. I mean, like
it's all we talk about.
Yeah,
now.
Common folk. Yeah, like me
right.
as a young.
Ishtar was a news story more than it was ever a movie.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen it before, so that's the one. That's the weird outlier in my list there. All the rest of those are kind of connected.
Those
somewhere.
are local Twin Cities actor, fantastic guy John Cutler is in Ishtar. He has some terrific stories.
What is he?
Oh shoot, I can't remember what he was in it. He did have some scenes with
in New York or in Morocco.
In Morocco.
He was one of the CIA guys or something.
Yeah, he spent like 2 months in Morocco with a lot of downtime. He has all these great stories.
Yeah, he must. I mean, there's a lot of just generic suit G-men in that movie. He must have been one of them. Yeah. I don't know what else he could have been.
Yeah. So, yeah, he had. But yeah, I remember.
That's interesting. I mean, if you're going to be involved in Ishtar, the Morocco part of it certainly was the more interesting.
Yeah. If you did not sleep much at all, I did the opposite. I was sleeping. I did all the sleeping.
Nice.
I had a cold that just. That's what this cold did, and it was we
just made you sleep.
Yeah, it was a cold that my wife had, and it was the same thing for her. She just could not stay awake, just needed to sleep and sleep and sleep, and that's what I did. And fortunately, I had a week where I could. I did not have anything hugely pressing going on except for Halloween, and which is I may have mentioned it on here before, but Halloween is like the high holy day for my son. And so it was lots.
You guys had the Banshee animated thing. It's one of the most adorable things I've ever seen. It's not just from knowing you. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, that was what my son wanted to be. For the last 2 years, he's wanted to be a twitching banshee, which is a prop from the one of those Halloween stores that comes up, just at Halloween time.
Yep.
And it's just creepy thing, but my son thinks it's hilarious and wonderful, and just, he's like, she seems happy though. She's, and I'm like, well, she's happy because she gets to, terrorize people. And he's like, is she mean then? I said, I don't know if she's mean. I don't know her well enough to know if she's mean, this banshee. Yeah. That could just be her job.
I don't want to rip on your parenting, but you're not really preparing him for encounters with real twitching banshees.
Well, true, but I figure I have time.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't want to, crush his little dreams.
Yep.
So I didn't watch much of anything.
I watched everything.
Yeah. So we had quite the polar opposite weeks.
I don't recommend. I mean, I'm glad I didn't have a cold. I guess it could have been worse, but. I don't recommend staying up all night, even when the movies are good.
Yeah. So The Godfather. Isn't there a cut of The Godfather that does everything chronologically?
We could do a whole 2 shows on the Godfather movies, of course. But just briefly to answer your query, because I'm a Godfather nut. He in the 70s for television, they edited a mini-series version of the first 2 Godfather movies that have a ton of deleted scenes put back in.
Oh.
And it's re-edited with, the 2 parts of part 2 are split up and bookending the regular Godfather. So it is roughly chronological. It's not completely chronological. Right. But and that version was HBO took the high def elements and put that back together, so that version's out there. You can watch that.
Yeah.
Coppola doesn't like that. He thinks.
Okay.
I mean, he did it, because I think because he needed the money and they were willing to pay for it.
Wanted it seen
and he does like some of the omitted stuff, but he thinks they're 2 movies. And you can't argue with them. They're 2 classic movies.
Oh, sure.
They're the way they are on purpose. Part 2 when you split it up like that, it loses a lot of the, the compare and contrast sort of thing going on in that story, but still good.
Yeah. Is that kind of the
It's called the Godfather Saga.
That's what it is. Because I remember seeing it like on the menu come up, but I've never watched it that way. I mean, and
if you've seen The Godfather 3 times or 10 times, then watching it that way is like a new way to watch it.
Yeah, and I suppose if there is, deleted material that is put back in,
an hour's worth almost.
There you go. So that in itself, if you, I love the first two Godfather films, but I'm not like a nut like you and I, like many people are.
Yeah.
Is the prevailing sort of feeling around the Godfather films is to watch it the way, watch Godfather 2, or is this Godfather Saga? Do people like that? Do you know?
Yeah, sure. There's some people who really love it.
But I guess that's why I bring it up.
But the prevailing opinion is that anytime you put an alternate version out there, there's somebody out there who loves the new digital effects they put in E.T. there, and somebody does.
Somebody does. Yeah.
Once you change it and then you put it out there, you're sort of obligated to make that available. I mean, that's now between you and the audience and the audience is what makes the movie. Yeah. But no, the vast majority of people who really are follow Godfather lore and that really, really adore the films is that the movies themselves are the thing. And that the sagas, some people hate the saga. It ruins it, they're purists. So it takes all kinds.
Yeah.
But, like I say, I like having them both, but you want to sit down for the saga. I mean, it is a mini series. It's I don't know what it is, 5 hours and change.
So I'll tell you what, dear listener, if you are that rare soul out there that has not watched him, watch them the way they were, frankly, were probably originally intended to be seen. Watch The Godfather, then watch Godfather 2. Then take a few years off, then come back and watch Godfather
I think so.
3.
I mean, I think it's just like the Star Wars prequels. I mean, you wouldn't... People say, you should watch those first or whatever, but you really should watch stuff in release order. That's the way the world saw it. That's the way the artist came to it, The things they're sharing with you in pre-stories and prequels are things that, they're assuming to some degree that you know.
Yeah.
And then those things are, because you have knowledge, those things take on deeper meaning. And, young Vito Corleone's story, when you've seen him as an old man, it takes on all this great meaning that if you just watch that at first, that less than half of part 2 before everything else, I'm sure it still plays because it's great stuff, but you're meant to have knowledge of that, and you're meant to be comparing young Vito's rise to power and Michael's sort of self-destruction. They're happening in the movie together, and that's deliberate. So I wouldn't rob myself of watching them the way they came out first.
Someday we'll do an entire episode dedicated just to. We'll either do one episode dedicated to The Godfather and Godfather 2, or they are good enough where we will just
do one apiece.
We'll
see. There's a lot to talk about with those, obviously.
It's that good. Well, thank you once again, dear listener, for joining us. Like I said, it is a cold and rainy Monday night. That's when we're recording this
from an undisclosed location on a couch.
I mean, it's in the Twin Cities. Where I have.
Well, yeah, it's not completely undisclosed. It's a bunker in the Twin Cities area. Where no GPS devices are allowed.
It was very much the steps that we have to go through. It's very much like it's a combination of Get Smart and Mystery Science Theater 3000. The doors and chambers with which we have to cross and enter to reach the big blue couch.
Yep. Anything else? You got a blurb? You got official business over there?
Some official business. Just want to make sure that people know how they can get in touch with us because, we are constantly asking, who are we? I mean, what does it mean to love? Will this insatiable thirst that dwells within us ever be quenched, or are we doomed to spend our days wandering this land with that which we yearn for with bated breath just out of our reach? I don't know, but if you like movies, Ryan and I talk about them into microphones and stuff. So we have been yammering on about movies and television for over 20 years with many people. Many people have told us to our faces that they don't hate it when we talk about movies.
Yeah, they use those exact words.
Yeah, we don't hate it. So now you, dear listener, have the opportunity to find out what our friends have been telling us for a long time. That you guys, and that means you, Ryan, me, Joel, you guys, hey, you're kind of fun. And we want to bring that fun to you. So if you have any questions or opinions about movies that you want to share and bounce off us and we can talk about them, please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Ask Joel and Ryan. On Facebook, you can like our page, The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. You can reach us via regular old email with askjoelandryan@gmail.com, or we are on the Podbean network, so you can reach us at joelandryan.podbean.com.
You really think I'm kind of funny?
I think you're very funny.
No, I thank you. The
problem is I don't laugh.
No, you laugh sometimes.
I mean, I do laugh sometimes, but it's like when you say something, I because of our friendships with other, really wonderful, talented people, I have over the years sort of learned I don't really, very rarely do I openly, boisterously laugh because I don't want to miss the next thing. So it's like I will often...
You've trained yourself.
Yeah, I'll be like, or I'll comment, I'll do that was funny. Like, I'll actually say, like, that's in place of laughing. Like, that's funny.
Nice.
Yeah. So, with that,
yeah,
I think we should take a hit down the countdown.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's the sound of the countdown exploding in your face. This week, so last week, if you're listening to us chronologically, unlike the Godfather saga, if you are listening to us, like the Godfather saga, if you are listening to us chronologically, that's what English. It's.
I was following you.
Yeah. Last week we decided to take a trip into the world of television, and that was fun, and that's great, and we will do that again. But this week we go back to the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Film de cinema, and we are talking about not movies this week, not individual movies, but we are actually going to get even more specific, and this week we are talking about individual characters in these movies.
Right.
And the topic this week is our top 5 CGI motion capture characters.
That's right.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, but no, there was a lot to choose from.
There was a lot to choose from.
So it's a worthy list,
yeah.
and worthy of discussion.
Yeah, I really wanted to make sure that we talked. I wanted to make sure we talked about something like individual performances instead of talking about these movies, and having to kind of cover the whole broad scope.
We're trying to mix it up and bring variety, the spice of life to the show.
And so Ryan and I, when we were talking about what our favorite CGI characters, I shouldn't say CGI. I'm going to probably default to motion capture characters.
I'm probably going to say CGI characters,
okay.
But just audience, so we're all on the same page. These are all characters that were created by performance capture, which means that somebody performed them. They're not just animated.
Yeah, they weren't. It's not some PA holding a stick with a tennis ball on the end,
right?
And telling the actors, "Hey, look, just keep looking at that ball."
These are actors with 100 little dots on their faces,
suits,
wearing helmet cams.
Yeah, these motion capture suits. They're in body suits with hundreds of different little digital points that are registering on
right
computers,
and then their performance is being animated based. On what they're doing with their expressions, their voice, everything else, their body. Even though the line moves around a lot, these are special effects characters that inhabit, they're animated characters that inhabit primarily, like I say, it's hard to say what the percentages are, but primarily live action films.
Yeah. So we're not talking about any of the Pixar films, right. or even a movie like the Christmas train, Polar Express.
Yeah.
Where Tom Hanks, or the Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey, where it's
right. We even brought up, and it didn't end up mattering for our list. Spoiler alert for the list, but we even ended up we talked a little bit about the Jon Favreau's version of Jungle Book.
Yeah,
and how it's tough to know what that is. There's certainly a live action kid in that, and a little bit of environment, but that movie's almost entirely animated.
Yeah.
So what is it? The line is hard on some of these, but that, we tried to stick to things that are primarily, maybe you could say if your main character is live action, then it's a live action movie. I don't know. We don't have to, that was a tough one that we didn't have to define.
Yeah, ultimately we were able to, we decided on 5 that we liked, that edged out Jungle Book, that we didn't have to, so we did not have to put ourselves
Yeah,
through
we
that.
didn't have to
call it a cop-out.
But even the
Fine.
films on this list is varying degrees of animated environments and everything else.
All right, so let's get to it.
All right.
Number 5,
Yes.
the BFG in the movie The BFG, the big friendly giant.
He's pretty friendly
Yeah.
compared to the other giants. I'll say that for him.
That's true. The actor, of course, Mark Rylance.
Really good actor.
Yeah, fantastic actor, and really, that to me, that's why it made the list. Is Mark Rylance is such a quirky. It's so specific, and there's never a wasted movement or twitch of his face ever in any of his performances. So to capture that quirkiness and that sort of he's definitely a person who exists. He walks through this world with the rest of us, but he's not quite exist in this world like the rest of us.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of BFG, but the other nice thing I'll say about it is that the film inherently, just spatially, has a difficult time getting the little girl character and BFG in frame together in a way that we can kind of relate to them. And yet it's like you'd expect from a Spielberg movie. The attention to detail, the attention to the emotional moment is all there, especially in the first 2/3-ish of the film.
Yeah.
Where their conversations, their interactions are very believable, even though their physical interactions are difficult to show on film. I mean, they do wide shots and stuff, but you can't tell the whole movie in wide shots, and you can't have somebody with a giant face and a teeny tiny face in frame easily many times throughout the movie. And yet that action, and I mean, it's because they perform those scenes together one way or another.
Yeah.
He was there, she was there. That choice to do it that way really helps that film along a lot, in my opinion.
And just to me, I consider Mark Rylance as someone who's been lucky enough to see him perform live. He's such an incredibly gifted performer that to capture what he brings to a character, how he creates a character and what he does, I thought to see it digitalized was pretty spectacular.
So detailed, so many good and interesting choices, and more importantly than that, he's never showy in that way that anything remotely rings false. And if you've studied acting or attempted acting, that is it. That's the goal, right? It really is Mark Rylance and what he does. So he is special.
So number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4, we go to the Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about Davy Jones.
Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, The Chest, and Pirates of the Caribbean, The End of the World, or whatever.
At World's End. I think it's at World's End. Of course, portrayed by Bill Nye.
Yep.
Not the science guy. And before you come and destroy me at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter or any of the other places, I looked it up. He pronounces it Bill Nye.
I watched him do it.
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, we're gonna record this. We're gonna put this on record.
The world's gonna hear it.
Because for years I called it Nye.
you.
I said Nye. He accepted.
I said Nye too.
Yeah, he's
we were all like, that must
it's
be
fine.
it.
It's fine. Yeah, whatever. He's fine with it. But no, we we will honor the man and call him Bill Nye. You're just going to have to trust us that we do not mean the science guy.
All right, we mean the other guy.
But to his performance as Davy Jones, or as the character, Davy Jones is such again, there's, Bill Nye brings this wonderful these tics, these quirks of this character that has been cursed, and and he does not exist in human form.
He really doesn't, and that he really doesn't in any way.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you see, that's just, his eyes behind makeup or whatever. That whole thing is animated, really, and he feels very much like a physical presence. Now, he's not like, he is an actor sort of like Mark Rylance, but in Pirates of the Caribbean, it's not the same approach that he takes as Mark takes in the BFG. He's a very broad villain. He knows that's what he is. Yep. Like you said, ticks, and he's throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the roll.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that in that film, of course.
No, because those films are all about these actors creating these giant, broad.
And he performed like Mark. He performed the role on set, so everybody had the benefit of his presence and everything. But it's really amazing when you see how that was done. It's not just a couple of squids they animated. It's kind of the whole deal, and the amount of detail that they put into it. It's beyond and including what he brought to it is really, really amazing. And you at least me, I take it for granted when I'm watching it. I get used to him as a thing, as a presence in the scene, and you don't really consider it much of a, necessarily a CGI character, but it truly is.
Yeah, it's really great. Say what you want. Some people love these films. Some people hate these films. Hey, they've made 4 of them, 5 of them, however they're making. They're making it up. They're making a 5th one?
No, they've made 5.
They've made 5, and they're making a 6th one.
Are they?
Yeah.
Good
yeah.
gravy.
Because that was the big deal. Johnny Depp is no longer going to be in the film.
What? Why? Then just make a different pirate movie, for heaven's sake.
Hey, well,
who's gonna be in the film?
I don't know. I stopped paying attention.
Maybe that's one of those where they say they're going to make it, but then they don't make it. It just goes away.
Sure. Well, it could very well at this point. When they said that Johnny Depp is no longer...
the 4th Divergent movie.
Right.
Just, they say, oh, yeah, we're going to make that. We're going to make it for TV. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we're not actually going to do anything. We're bailing on this.
Guys, just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Just let it go away.
Anyway,
so he's so those movies, but he is that character is wonderfully creepy, and just this great villain, this great foil, this really interesting character that opposite opposite Captain Jack Sparrow.
Yeah,
and just hell bent on tormenting him, which is of course great.
Yeah, but in a very cool rock star sort of way.
Yeah, what a great way. Yeah, total rock star.
He really is.
Yeah, that's and Bill Nye. If you don't know, you say rock star, it's really it makes me think of his character in Love Actually, where he's playing this aged rock star who's capturing one last hit with a Christmas song, and he's just this giant over the top. Just this giant force of a guy.
Right, and he's not one of those, like, he's getting all bent out of shape. Like, he's a badass and he knows it.
Yeah, he's a badass and he knows it. It's a great way to put it.
It's pretty fun performance.
Speaking of badasses, and they know it, number 3. Number 3 is one of the greatest creatures in all of cinematic history, dating all the way back to the early days of movies. The character, however, for our purposes, we are talking about the 2005 version of King Kong and Kong.
Yeah, King of the Jungle.
King of the Jungle. The actor playing it is the single greatest motion capture artist working. He helped redefine everything. His name is Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
You may hear that name again.
You never, if you just hang in there a little bit longer, you might hear it again.
And frankly, if you're ever in a conversation with someone and they're talking about, oh yeah, that was an actor, he was in a suit, one of those motion capture suits. I don't know who played him. You can go. If you just say Andy Serkis, you have a really good chance of being right.
It's a good bet
because he's kind of synonymous with motion capture roles because he's so good.
Well, and you can say what you want about Kong 2005. That is not everybody's cup of tea. It's a little bit bloated and some other things. And I'll go so far as to say that not all the effects in Kong 2005 are even that great. Some of them sort of show their limitations. I mean, Peter Jackson in that film in a couple of different places managed to his imagination managed to exceed what was possible.
Yeah.
With the time and money that they had, even though they had a decent amount of time and an absolute ton of money.
Yeah.
That the part they got right in that movie, in every frame, is Kong himself. There's absolutely not a wrong note with regards to him. And that, if you were going to prioritize something, that was the thing to prioritize. The battles are fantastic. He has an absolute, fully formed, personality. His motivations and his thought processes are completely clear. He's basically, unlike the previous Kongs, he's certainly this original brilliant stop motion Kong, which is iconic, obviously, and Rick Baker's suit in the '76 Kong, which really, given that they kind of had to come in with that at the last second, is pretty amazing, and some of the other hydraulic pieces that they added to it. But for me, the most believable one in all those is Kong 2005, and of course, there's a lot. Each film, represents the pathos of its era, and he's a much more sympathetic character than we've had playing that part before. I think it's much. I mean, Kong Skull Island, which just came out, which has its own kind of different version of Kong, and that's pretty great. I still think that 2005 Kong, that's his. It ages really well. I mean, that's a while back now, and it still looks just perfect. And Andy plays him with a lot of soul, and the great Naomi Watts really makes the character come to life, and her interactions with him are completely believable.
Yeah, as an actor, I keep thinking about, when I hear interviews and stuff, or I read interviews where people are talking about having to, act looking at a tennis ball on a stick and just going, oh yeah. But And that's great, and some people have been able to give really wonderful performances that way. But being on set, I gotta imagine having another actor right there that you were able to play. Even
though it was just Andy Serkis on a scaffold, they still made a point to have him there the whole time.
Yeah, and having and then as an actor being able to interact and feel that energy, those beats coming off of another flesh and blood actor.
Yeah,
man, it does make a difference, and
that's the case for every single one on our list too.
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that at the top, but it is a big, it does help. I know it kind of sounds cheesy to say that, but as an actor, it does matter.
As much as great a performance as a person can give in a suit, and as great animation and Kong 2005 has as good a creature animation as you're likely to see. Some of the physics is a bit iffy, but the animation itself is amazing. I use that word a lot. Sorry, amazing. I'll try and do better. But I think, I was amazed during parts of that film. Yeah. But it really is the people that, the thing that sells the reality of stuff more than anything is the other people in the other roles who are reacting to it. If that's believable, and if it's cut and put together in a way that you really, the timing of it, all of it needs to be right for it to work. It's an unbelievably big illusion.
Yep.
And I think it works pretty great in Kong 2005, despite its other flaws. The Kong relationship between the characters it interacts with is very, very vivid and real.
So number 2 on our list is a character from the biggest movie ever made, the highest grossing movie
Of all time.
Avatar, and the character of Neytiri.
Neytiri in Avatar.
The actress playing it, Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, no stranger to these types of parts.
Correct. She was the best part of this giant movie. I remember not. I mean, I don't love the movie. I saw it and I thought it was fine, and it was kind of.
Well, it's quite a spectacle.
It's a huge spectacle, and I appreciated that. The story I found.
I like an old-fashioned jungle adventure, which is what it is.
Yep. But she absolutely was the best part.
I think so. She's, and it's Cameron. He's clever in how he introduces us. We meet these avatars first, so we see what we think the Na'vi are. Which is just big blue versions of these people that we've already met, and it's very cool when that happens because you see the people, then you see them, as CGI characters. And you can tell they're the same. You really get the sense, this is a whole, this you really get a sense of what motion capture is because you really do get that before and after. It's constructed that way on purpose. But then when Neytiri shows up, you really get that this is a different. I mean, as much as you can for a human and playing a humanoid creature, this is a whole different kind of thing than what we've seen. They have got their own culture and their own way of speaking, even when they're speaking our language. Like it's all been thought out and written pretty well and layered on pretty well. And then Zoe just attacks that role. I mean, it's a pretty cool role, the warrior princess. I mean, who wouldn't want to? What girl out there wouldn't want to play that role? It's awesome. But she just, I don't know. You can, she's really strong.
And to me, what sets her performance apart, and why I like it so much to bring it all the way to number 2, it's not she is a warrior princess, but it's when she's not fierce, when she's not angry, when she's not enraged. It's when she is. When she's in love, when she is laughing, when she is, and when she's afraid. I think about when she meets Sam Worthington's character. Oh my God, I can't pull the character's name now. But she meets him, not the avatar him, when she when she has to go in
and she sees what he is and recognizes him.
That there is fear, there is confusion. It is a really layered moment. Yeah, and you see all of that in the digitalization of this character. So which again, because these are hundreds upon hundreds of points on her face that the animators are then capturing, and so great credit to obviously not just and again we say this for all of these, not just great credit to these performers, but
the animators
who took this information and then
the imagination to use the tech that they had and to create more with the express purpose of bringing an army really but all played by actors of animated characters to life. It really is quite an accomplishment. That film got a lot of the buzz around it was it's 3D and 3D is going to change everything. And 3D didn't change anything, but the way they advanced motion capture for that film, that really is the great innovation of Avatar, and it has changed films. All these Marvel films and the Hulk and what they're able to achieve now that they couldn't before. It's very impressive, and it started there, and it was obviously not just a team but an army of people that brought that together. So good on them.
It's one of the reasons why I do love film. It is a collaborative art form.
For sure.
So that is, I am a nerd that way. So anyway, now we move to number 1.
Number 1.
And I freely admit that this is a bit of a cheat.
Well, but on points, these it's two. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, it's two.
It's two, and they tied, and they're related, and they're similar in a lot of ways. The pros and cons.
Yeah,
but they really did tie on points. I had one at 1, and the other at 2. You had the one at 1 and the other at 2. So we flipped,
and it does. And then we're like, okay, I guess we're just. We could
have picked one.
We could have picked one. We could have also just said, okay, we're gonna have a tie at number 1, but then we'd not have a number 2. We'd have a
well,
3.
that's technically how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, this does allow us to have to sneak in
to
a
have
sixth.
our top 5 have actually 6
top
on
6.
it.
Yeah. But
let's get to it.
Yeah, we mentioned his name before, and so I'll say it at the top. The linking component to these is Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis, yeah.
But my number 1 was Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, and my number 1 was Caesar particularly in the Planet of the Apes sort of reboot trilogy, but particularly the second two. Yeah. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes.
Which I also intensely liked this character, this performance.
Let's start with that one and work our way up to Gollum, and that way Gollum can be sort of ceremonially our number 1.
Sure.
The Caesar, I put Caesar number 1. You put him number 2, and we both love it. The reason I have him number 1 is just because the level of sophistication with Caesar goes beyond what they were able to do for Gollum. And we'll get to that in a second. But that's why I chose it. The Planet of the Apes films, the human characters in it are perfunctory in a way. They truly are the whole shebang in a way that, in whatever fantasy movie we're talking about, they hadn't quite achieved. When we were talking about Davy Jones, it's the same. And maybe all of these characters, the goal is obviously that you lose yourself in the story, but truly watching the apes in the Planet of the Apes movies, and it's all of them. It's not just Caesar. It's, we're using him as the figurehead, obviously, but all those characters, Toby Cabell and the others who play the other ape characters, they're all completely fully realized and almost entirely photoreal in every scene in both of those films.
Yeah, Toby Cabell almost made my list too.
Oh, boy.
Because of those scenes between him and Andy Serkis.
Yeah, and my favorite bits of him is when he sneaks up on those two guys guarding the weapon stores or whatever, and to kind of worm his way into their world, he acts like the dumb ape.
Yep.
And he it's not just that he does that and that's clever from a storytelling. It's that, you've got a guy playing an ape, playing a guy who's an ape who's smarter than these two idiots, and by pretending to be an idiot. And it, to me, to even think about the idea of that is very exciting, and it's completely real on screen. Toby's great; they're all great, but again, Andy has really achieved. I mean, to me, maybe there'll be another performance at some point. To me, that's the pinnacle of motion capture right now, the Planet of the Apes films. Absolutely. And they're great science fiction. They're a bit of a downer. They're not very celebratory stories. There's action in them, but the action it punctuates what really is dramas with these ape characters.
Yeah, they're actually. I mean, they're big movies.
Sure.
These Planet of the Apes, but I sort of feel like in terms of other big giant blockbusters, they're underrated.
Maybe.
Is that just my feeling?
Well, no. I think they are underrated to, that's a hard word, but they're underrated to the degree that, they're not for everybody because they're serious in tone. They're, you know what I mean? They're tragic in a way. They're very complicated films about ideas, and I'm not saying that the people who out there watching the other big blockbusters aren't into that kind of thing, but they're budgeted in a way that just secures them a little bit against the fact that they're not grand entertainments. Sure. They really are hard science fiction in a way, or hard speculative fiction. They're meant to challenge the audience. They do a great job of that, and not every audience member wants to be challenged.
Yeah. So in the way that Caesar, and we both agree that Caesar is the pinnacle of motion picture capture performance right now.
Yeah.
In the way that Caesar is the top, Gollum, Andy Serkis as Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, kind of is the bar by which we judge everything.
Yeah.
Because it really was, it redefined everything. I mean, that was everyone thought that it was blown away by the fact that was an actor in motion capture performing that role, and not just pure animation, not just done just in the digital world.
Right. To be fair, the birth of the modern CGI characters is Jar Jar in Phantom Menace.
Sure. Yep.
But Gollum, who we came across just a couple of years later, and really they were working on them all kind of around the same time.
Yep.
Is part of it's the storytelling. There's other things that make it better, but it's a massive leap forward. Gollum is, man, it's just even today, 20-ish years later, he still is exactly what he's supposed to be. If you grew up reading those stories, there's nothing about Gollum that disappoints. At least I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And he's such a believable part of those scenes that he's in. And I mean, again, you take him for granted. You really believe he's there.
Yeah. And
when Sean Astin's like throwing him around and strangling him, I mean, he feels slightly animated, but he's got weight to him, and he's got that incredible personality.
Yep. And the ability to go from really sympathetic to really creepy and evil. In just
these two different, right? He's a split personality,
and to make that turn so succinctly, so cleanly, from a digital and from a performance standpoint is really tremendous, and Jackson's
so brave enough to shoot him the way he doesn't shoot him like let's prove that he's he shoots him like he's an actor in a scene.
Yeah.
So even when he's doing his split personality thing, there's no effort to make it. You know what I mean? They intercut between the two.
Yeah.
It's to me that's the way to do it. That's what makes it feel. That's part of what makes it feel real.
Yeah.
So again, everybody's firing on all cylinders with Gollum, and then when we see him again, and in The Hobbit, a decade and change later, it's great to see him again, and he's still awesome. It's.
So that's our list. That is to us, that is our top. That is our favorite 5. Our top 5 CGI motion capture characters in film. Did we miss one? Would you rather have seen Smaug?
Smaug, we thought of Smaug.
Would you like to have seen Jar Jar Binks on this list?
Yes, I mean he has his place in CGI character history, and that can't be taken away from Jar Jar. Or really,
without Jar Jar,
there's a handful of CGI characters in Phantom Menace when there weren't many CGI characters in anything before.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was one of the big things about the Phantom Menace was that this was going to be a primarily digital world,
right? And the newer Star Wars movies are doing a pretty good job of advancing that too. Yeah. They haven't quite jumped off into Jar Jar territory, into a character that has quite that much screen time, but it's good stuff.
So do you feel like we should have put that on the list? Well, then, obviously, you know where to reach us.
Yeah.
You know to reach us at AskJoelAndRyan on Twitter and at AskJoelAndRyan@gmail.com. Facebook, movie page, or the movie show with Joel and Ryan.
Yeah.
All those places.
Now on iTunes
and now on iTunes. So anyway, now we get to move on. I feel like we need a little rapid fire Hollywood hot take.
Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes.
Let's get some hot takes. Here we go. Okay, I will jump right into. There needs to be an increase in number of movies based on real-life events.
An increase?
I think there needs to be even more of them.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
There are plenty of movies based on real events, aren't they?
They're actually
Plenty of movies ripped from the
27% of all
headlines
movies. 27% of all movies in 2018 were based in some aspect on real life events.
I don't have all the facts and figures like you, Jaws, but I'll just say this. That sounds like a good percentage to me. We're good.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want
Yeah.
them to go away. I'm not against them. I just think the percentage feels about right.
2018 is the year of the critic-proof movie.
No. What movies are critic-proof?
Well, the idea behind this is that movies that get lambasted by critics still are finding popularity. Movies that are that critics are saying what this should have never been made. That's horrible. It doesn't matter. Critics are not having any.
This is Hollywood hot takes, and we're
yeah.
supposed to cruise through these, but I'm just going to point out a phenomena that's happening. It's happening a little bit generationally. It's definitely happening at the cinema, but people, for the most part, audience these days I don't want to say a tongue-in-cheek approach because that can be a little much, but they do like a meta approach to what they're watching. They like to be winked at a little bit. They like to, especially with all this fantastic cinema and these monster movies and the superhero movies, they like them full of humor and they like them to be commenting a little bit on themselves. And to do that, you have to have a looser, lighter tone. And that, that doesn't mean you can't have a great movie that way or you can't have a terrible movie that way. Mm-hmm. But those films that are like that are somewhat impervious to critics because people are like, hey, I'm here to have fun and I'm having fun with these guys. I'm having fun with this giant shark and I'm having fun with the whatever. Mm-hmm. You can't take that from me, you curmudgeonly critic. At the same time, things like, Batman versus Superman are coming out, and that movie, I don't want to get into that. That movie had, other problems, but but its biggest problem, in my opinion, ultimately was its tone. It was very serious. Mm-hmm. It was very self-serious. And that's not very trendy right now. That people reject that. The same people that are loving the Avengers movies don't want to see their Cape Wonders, taking it all too seriously. Yep. And in that way, I do agree with that hot take. The critics, in a world where that's the hot thing, critics, their job really isn't very important.
Yep. This next hot take,
yes,
comes from a Twitter user named August_of_wind. So
nice.
This dude's name is August. Now he has his Twitter
August
handle,
of Wind.
Yeah. So, but he had changed his thing to this giant, long, convoluted thing. Didn't really care. But his Hollywood hot take comes from him. Average Joe reviews, so when you're looking at a review and they're just in advertisements, and they're just posting this person on Twitter, at Ask Joel and Ryan said. Best movie of the year, this made me cry, from Kim and Topeka. Average Joe reviews and advertisements should be illegal.
No, but they're terrible. I mean, they shouldn't be illegal. I'm not for banning things that aren't hurting anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, so I'll just say that.
Come on, this is a hot take.
I'm not.
Illegal.
I'm not. Then no, they're fine. They're awful. But they're fine. And the reason I say that, I really don't like a lack of nuance. I don't like best movie ever reviews or worst movie ever reviews. Vast majority of movies that you see are somewhere in between those two things. So your 5 stars and your 1 star, if you find yourself using those and overusing them, you're not a great reviewer, in my opinion. I want you, if you want to be a reviewer, bring some clarity to the situation by trying to analyze what's in front of you for what it is. Ask yourself what it is, and then ask yourself if it achieves what it's trying to be, without trying to read people's minds. It's hard to do that in a sentence. So I think all those blurbs and blurps are pointless. They don't make me want to see anything. They're stupid. Yep. But at the same time, that it's advertising, it's marketing, whatever. Yep. It's here to stay. That's cool. I don't care.
So
I don't care if it's from Newsweek or if it's from whatever.
That's true.
One of us.
They hold the same weight. is what you're saying.
No, not necessarily, but do they no, but it's not as out of balance as, you would think. Sure. It's a marketing blurb. Once they throw your opinion up there in some catchy, snappy way, you're a piece of marketing. You're not a critic anymore.
Yeah.
You just aren't. So if you actually are a critic and you write for the New York Times, or you're actually just some schmo, it doesn't matter. But I don't want to say they're weighted the same. An actual critic with credentials, with a writing style, who's worked his way up, who is published, who has a subscription base, all that matters. But it's not the end all be all. Anybody can have an opinion. Just ask us.
My favorite hot take that I've heard in a very, very long time.
All right.
I found this on Twitter from a woman named Katie Rodriguez at My Fair Kit. Now she says in this tweet that she did not come up with this, that she heard this, but I was not able to find the source.
So we're repeating something from Katie that Katie heard from somebody unsourced.
Else, but I cannot find the source of this.
But it's your favorite hot take, so we got to do it.
It's my favorite hot take because I had to do it.
Yeah.
The King's Speech is a sports movie. It is the underdog. One coach believes in him.
I don't have my clock sound effect queued up or my Jeopardy theme queued up.
A friend of hers says, "Tell me more, please." The underdog. One coach believes in him and trains him against all odds.
Yeah.
The big game finale. He wins. The crowd goes wild. The King's Speech.
Well, that's why I paused, because my answer is it isn't, but it really has a lot of the same tropes and structure. Yeah. We've talked about sports movies on here before, and their formula is what's so wonderful about them. There's so many variations you can have within the formula, and yet the formula is so safe and familiar that you just can get swept along so easily. And King's Speech, it really is just that kind of film.
Yep.
But it's not a sports film.
I have reached out to Ms. Rodriguez in hopes of finding out who this is sourced to, where she heard it, and I will make that correction on a later one.
It's a good call and a great comparison.
When I read it, I laughed. So I did the same thing. I read it, and I was just kind of silently stared at my phone and went, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
And
then I just laughed because it does. It's so perfect. It's a perfect sports trope movie.
Yeah, you bet.
Oh man. So thank you, and I will thank you in public when we find out who actually where she heard this. But that made me laugh, man.
That's King's a great Speech.
One. Oh, okay. Anyway, so
hard to deny.
Yeah, that is. So I'm really curious. Ryan, we actually had our very first email question submission.
Yeah? For Ask Joel and Ryan? Are we moving on?
Ryan, we are moving
on.
I
have a question. Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you!
What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
Yeah, and we've been fairly straightforward about this. We asked our fellow critic friends to send us a bunch of questions, and a handful of them, God bless them, just bombarded us with a bunch, and we've been using those fairly, almost, not quite, but almost exclusively up until now. And now we have an outsider with a question, a subscriber.
This is from Matthew Malin.
Okay.
What is your number one heave cry movie? The one that cuts you to the depths of your soul. I mean, literally the movie that prevented you from going out into public for a few days. His answer is The Passion of the Christ. He says he's a man of faith, so it hit deep for him. And if he were to put faith aside, he says his was The Green Mile. It was very tough for him to watch. And he says, in all caps, I think, quoting Ryan, amazing.
Sorry, folks. So it's funny, you do a podcast and then you start listening to yourself and you're like, man, I say amazing a lot.
I do say that a lot.
And I say it and it's almost never actually amazing, but whatever. I think you're stuck with that one because clearly that's a tough habit to break. We've talked earlier about In the Name of the Father, which is a movie that rips my heart out when we watch it. You said you won't even watch it again.
Nope.
I watch it. And there's just something about it. It's like you say, that you feel trapped, and just injustice is just so terrible. And those are the types of movies that get to me. I there's a right answer for this that I'm not going to bring up, so I'm saying that one because that really does have that sort of, like just choked up feeling. Recent like populist entertainments, I was very moved by 2 or 3 things in Interstellar. Just a couple of scenes. The scene where the organ's rolling and he's driving away for the first time from his kid and he's breaking down, and certainly the scene where, spoiler alert for the that's not so much a spoiler, but this next thing is spoiler alert for Interstellar, but that scene where he comes back after the time debt on that first planet and sees his daughter, really her first correspondence with him since he's been on this mission, and she's the same age as him, and she's just still mad at him, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking. It really ripped. I mean, it's, I don't know. It gets to me. It gets to me in that amazing way where this is a thing that, I don't know, this is a thing that is impossible to relate to in any sort of real by the numbers way, but in an emotional way. That's why it's good science fiction, because in an emotional way it's completely familiar and really, it's just a really wonderful scene, and I watched it 3 times and I almost cried every time. So.
Now, to the listener, Ryan didn't know this question ahead of time. It's weird that the movies that he pulls that he just pulled up. Now I give him a very generalized sort of thing. Think about things that you've reacted to.
Right. I don't know the hot takes, and I don't know the Astral and Ryan. So we think it might be more fun that way.
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
And as I've said before, I'm fascinated by the way Ryan's brain works while we're talking about these things. So I wanted there to be an element of where he doesn't know what's coming, and just see what comes. I say this as preface that I the movies that I thought about. Now, I have a huge problem with injustice movies where the wrong person is accused and has to very frustratingly fight for survival, and for innocence, for whether it be Shawshank, movies like Shawshank Redemption and things. I also had an incredibly, I did cry after watching The Green Mile for the first time. I think there were other elements to that. I had to drive like 2 hours. I was working in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska and had to drive over 2 hours to get to Hot Springs, South Dakota, just to be anywhere near civilization, to see a movie. And it was like the first movie I'd seen since in months, and I just remember just getting really, really emotional. And then it's funny that you bring up Interstellar, because the one that I most recently saw where I got really emotional was The Arrival.
And Arrival has its spots for sure.
Yeah, and I just got really, there was some of it I was reacting from the beauty of it. Sometimes I was, and just sort of the structure of, technically being moved by the movie making to an emotional place, and then obviously the story, some of the story elements just being so moved by these characters, especially Amy Adams' character. We're both moved.
We're thinking along parallel
fiction.
lines.
Yeah.
We're partners. Hey, thanks for the question, Matt. That was a good one. If I think of something else too, we'll try and chime in with us. That's always a good one.
Absolutely. So that kind of does anything coming up for you this week, Ryan? You gonna watch 4,000 other? Are you gonna pick another filmmaker? What does November look like?
My God, I hope not. Well, it's the start of the holidays, whether you like it or not. The Christmas commercials are already on TV. They started on Thursday.
Yep.
So I'm sort of a creature of habit. I'll probably tell you, maybe I'll tell you next time what I'm about to watch, and I won't spoil it now, but I've got a bunch of little kind of old memories and things I'll live through coming up through the holidays. And then the holidays are when I watch the most new movies. So in a podcast or two, I'll be bouncing off the wall with opinions about things you guys have all seen for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
But I take some time I used to get a big vacation, which is why I do it. I'm not getting that this year, but I, as a bit of routine, I always take some time to watch a lot of Oscar movies during Oscar season, and I've got a lot of stuff saved up.
That's what I'm hoping. Now that we have this podcast, I'm hoping that I will be able to prioritize going to see some of these movies more. So, kind of like what I used to do in my pre-child days. Hopefully gonna be able to see some of this fun stuff that that I used to see all the time, but haven't been
Maybe
able,
we'll find a way to do some of that together. We could.
That would be spectacular.
And then we can talk about it together.
And I know that you, the listener, would really, really appreciate that. And hey, if you want to come see a movie with us, if you live in the Twin Cities area and you're, one of our friends, hey, you can always just reach out and contact us and say, hey, let's go see a movie.
Yeah, and if we don't respond to that, that's nothing on you. You're still probably a good person.
Yeah, you're a good person. If you want to fly in from places unknown to see a movie with us,
then you're a little too into the show, and you should probably
just breathe.
Question, it's
we're
glad you're a fan.
Oh boy, do we appreciate it! But
calm down, look out the window. There's a lot of great stuff out there in the world.
We got a long time we get to be together.
Yeah,
through your ear holes.
All right.
So
on
thank
that
you.
Note,
Yep, thank you once again, everyone, for joining us for the movie show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
All right, join us next time on the Big Blue Couch.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Precious. What's potatoes, huh?
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.